We're going to first introduce an alum who a few weeks ago surprised us with his interest in doing a commitment for a new professorship at Simon. Christian Gordon and Janice Wollick, the chair of our development committee at Simon, worked with this alum, Marty Lakoff, a member of class of 71. Yesterday it got finalized, so we're very pleased to share some good news with you. He couldn't be here in person, but he'll be here in the next best thing by Skype. Marty, welcome.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Mark asked me to say a few words as to what motivated me to create the new chair. And, I was thinking, what makes a school great and attract the best students? It's certainly not the weather. It's the faculty. It's the faculty, the professors that you'll be learning from. I was fortunate enough to attend the Simon School in the early 70s. And I felt we had the best professors there and they were on the cutting edge. As a result, I was better prepared than my peers were when I hit Wall Street. I guess nowadays we say I was toughened up. I got to know and work with the likes of Professors Carl Brunner, Bill Meckling, Cliff Smith, Bill Schwert, Mike Jensen, to name a few. And through them we knew Professors Alan Meltzer, Eugene Fama, Fisher Black, and Myron Scholl. Heck, we traded the Black-Scholes option pricing model before it was published. Mike was more than a professor to me. He was a mentor and a friend. He helped me land my first job on Wall Street and was there for me when I needed him. It was Carl Brunner who first suggested that I create a chair for Mike back in the 80s. I thought we'd just go to Office Depot. Little did I know. But it was worth it to have Mike Jensen be the first to occupy the chair that was created. And I'm now creating this new chair, the Michael C. Jensen Professorship, to help ensure that Simon continues to attract and keep the best professors, as well as to honor Mike Jensen. The chair will provide a connection between the Simon School and Professor Jensen in perpetuity, and recognize the significant impact of his teaching and research at a formative time in the life of the school, as well as the significant impact Mike has had on my own life. I can't tell you how happy I am to create this chair. This will also cement the bond that I have with the Simon School and Professor Jensen. Meliora.
Can I say something?
Yeah. Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Good. So I'm honored, of course, but I just want to express my gratitude for what you're doing for the school. As you well know, and many people here do, this school had an enormous impact on me when I came here in 1967. Bill Meckling had been here for a couple of years before that, so it was like a brand new organization. And man, did it ever click. So it affected the rest of my life. And eventually, I didn't know that it was going to cost me my friendship with Bill, but at some point when he retired, I decided to go off to Harvard where people didn't agree with me. Now that was a good decision, but the bad part of that was I lost Bill as a friend and I was separated from my Simon School colleagues more than I liked. But it was very valuable being there. Not because it was a better place, it wasn't, but they didn't agree with me. They had very different views, and that was incredibly important for my continuing work. So I don't know that I ever explained to Mark why I ever made that decision, but it wasn't because I didn't like the Simon School. So thank you again, Marty. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being there.
President Sullivan's with us today. This news happened fairly quickly. He was able to switch some meetings around to also recognize Mike and Marty Lakoff.
And let me echo extraordinary gratitude that we all feel to Marty Lakoff. This is a great gift and for a great purpose. Michael Jensen is a scholar who, those of you who are students of business, students of financial economics, appreciate his great achievements. But he's transcendent. He is a scholar who, at various times, literally was the most often quoted and cited scholar in the social sciences. He's someone that I, as a mere lawyer, lacking the intellectual background that so many of you have in business, was deeply aware of. His intellectual contributions to law and economics, as we called it in our somewhat cognate field, are again of fundamental significance. For decades, we essentially relied on what was called the Burlean means model, and it was a model that Mike and Dean Meckling brought into at least the late 20th century. It is worth appreciating that Mike's scholarship and contributions have continued almost nonstop, both at Simon and afterwards. He is the rarest of great scholars and great researchers. He seems never to grow old, but constantly to reinvent himself. I can think of few more significant achievements for Dean Zupan and the Simon School than to create an endowed professorship in Mike Jensen's name. He is a personification of the greatness of the faculty here in one of its greatest periods. And to know that this will permanently be a part, and that there will be not just an inaugural Mike Jensen professor, but perhaps like the experience of the holders of Isaac Newton's professorship, Mike Jensen professors into the centuries to come, is something of extraordinary pleasure. Now, it's been a custom that I've had the real honor to host dinners when we have inaugural professorships and to attend the ceremonies, and I look forward to this, and maybe to pick up on points that Marty stressed at the beginning of his remarks. I will make a forecast, and I do that in deference to my wife, who is a great real estate forecaster who just heard. I will make a forecast. I will go out on a limb. I promise you, whenever this dinner occurs, the weather will be better. And you can hold that to me, Mike.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I could just add one sidelight. Can you hear me?
Marty.
I guess not.
No, by all means.
Okay, I just want to tell you that, I fell out of touch with the Simon School and maybe had some of my own issues, and it took Mark and Christian to come down and bring me back into the fold. So a lot of the reason this has happened is because of those two.
You're here.
Thanks, Marty.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you, Marty. A small memento we're going to give to Mike, and probably in a few weeks, once more people have a chance to sign it. It'll be at the reception afterwards. So if you have the opportunity as a faculty, staff, alum, current student to sign it, we'd ask you to add your signature. It's got rush wreaths, which is our iconic symbol in the middle, flanked by the article Mike wrote with the former dean in 1976. And take a close look. It's got a quote on the title page from Adam Smith. So it draws on research that was set in motion 200 years prior to that. And the fundamental importance of skin in the game to deal with principal agent problems. That Mike had a seminal role in distilling, highlighting for a lot of other fields. The acknowledgments, you'll see a bunch of faculty that are still teaching at Simon or that in the past helped make our reputation. On the other side is the cover art, from that journal issue. And what you'll notice is it's the Journal of Financial Economics. Interesting story I learned just yesterday from Mike. He first sent the article off to the Bell Journal of Economics, which was a leading journal at the time, and got back scathing reviews. One referee, in fact, said this doesn't even merit being a proposal for a good paper. So they were down in the dumps for a while. Gene Fama, who won this year's Nobel in economics, read the article. He was off in Europe at the time. He was a member of the JFE editorial board. He decided we got to accept it. It became the lead article This is a journal that Mike started here. It's still edited here by Bill Schwartz. You look at the editors on the masthead, and it's a who's who. There's 7 editors that Mike brought into this journal that ended up winning the Nobel Prize. And that story still isn't done. That there are others still in the running for the years to come. There's no other economics journal that's had a similar gathering of top scholars that Mike put together in the JFE. And also of note, the article's the best cited of all time in the business school literature. So in terms of impact, not just for the journal or Simon, he literally played more than anybody else the leading role putting us on the map. So we'll sign it, Mike. We'll give it to you with our great gratitude. Thank you from all of us at the school.
I do have to confess, Mark was polite to ignore this part. I do think I told him. But since I was the managing editor, I got to decide what was the leading article. And I remember telling Bill, this article is going to be very important, and therefore I'm going to make it the leading article. So that's how it got there.
Great assessment. Also gives me great pleasure to introduce Richard Sands, who's a member of our advisory board, a member of the University of Rochester Board of Trustees. Was braving the snows on 490 coming up in the Victor area today, and is the founder of the series with his family. There are very few, you can count them literally on one hand, of CEOs or chairs of the board of major world corporations that have a PhD. He's one of those. Over the last 7 years, I've had the great honor and pleasure of serving on the board of directors for Constellation Brands. And it's been a wonderful perspective to see how great companies are run and built. Richard and his brother, now Rob, who's the CEO, are the driving engine. Before them, their father as well. And what makes it tick from a board member's perspective is the values that they promote and their emphasis on developing people. The last year and a half, the stock price has come close to tripling. And what put it together is the team that they developed to be able to engineer this acquisition of production and distribution rights from Modelo in all of the United States. And by all looking at the transaction, the team literally ran circles around the best in the world. Richard's been immensely generous to our university, to our school. We now have 50 alums that work with the firm, many in senior positions. It started, initially we shared with them that 70% of our students want to stay in Rochester, 10% come here, 15% historically have stayed. And so Richard decided when he was CEO to start an internship program. He thought Constellation couldn't match what UBS or another major financial institution in New York City would pay, but he was amazed in the first year that all 6 internships got accepted. And so that's led to continuing opportunities to help build that culture. He's a wonderful developer of talent, like his father, who stepped aside early so Richard could start as a leader. He himself stepped aside early so his younger brother could develop as a leader. And it's been wonderful to watch how much pride he takes in developing people. That led to the genesis of this leadership series, to see what could be distilled, best lessons about leadership. Mike Jensen was the inaugural lecturer. We're glad to have him back as the latest installment. But without further ado, Richard Sands.
First of all, I really have to thank Mike and Werner, because the reason that this team has been so successful is because we always made sure that they were incentivized to create fundamental shareholder value as opposed to being incentivized by the agency power of their position. So they came to the right conclusions that way, as opposed to the wrong conclusions. And you can see that in the stock price. So we're very proud of what everybody at Constellation has done. So, I think we're running a little bit late, and you've heard a lot about Mike and Werner, and so I'm not going to go through their resumes. They gave me 2 pages worth of items. Okay? We are very, very fortunate to have such esteemed people here today, and I believe that all of us will learn a lot if I be quiet, if I shut up and let them talk. So thank you for coming back, Mike, and thank you for being here. And we look forward to what you both have to say.
Great, thanks.
Okay.
We're honored to be here. I'm going to go out here. It's going to be difficult for me to find a place. So we're going to be talking about this course, Being a Leader, and the effective exercise of leadership, an ontological phenomenological model. And I'm going to warn you right now that there's a whole bunch of the language that we're going to be using that you're going to find weird. And you would like us, because it will be in your mind, you would like us to stop using those weird terms. But if you want to accomplish what we've accomplished, you have to create a different conversational domain. It's like, some of you will be going through this, it's like going to take a mathematics course and telling the professor, I don't want you talking about things like derivatives and that kind of stuff, and integrals. And I'm going to be not at all shy. We have actually created a miracle. And it was all due to Mark, who gave us the opportunity, gave us a 5-year grant of what we created was a leadership laboratory in which we could experiment with new ways of dealing with teaching and communication. That was in a conversation shortly after you took the deanship. You remember better than I, but both of us had been exposed to some ontological material, and I know for most of you in this room that doesn't make any sense. And we were very interested in its power and very interested as to how we could get it into the educational establishment. And out of that meeting in your conference room that day came the idea that we would create a course and we would use this material to teach something. Now, what were we going to teach? We decided we were going to teach leadership. Why? Because nobody can be against leadership. And that turned out to be actually a profoundly good judgment. So I asked you to bear with us because you're going to hear funny language, like when you got into your first mathematics course or your first whatever weird course. It's like, anyway, so let's get on with what we're doing. We're going to run late because Werner and I prepared an hour and a half's talk, probably an hour and 45 minutes, but he's promised to be on time. I never fulfill my promises. You'll find out about integrity. So first of all, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. What we're going to do is actually read these slides to you. Now, for a while, you're going to be ticked off about that. It turns out to be an enormously important element in the success of this course, and you'll see from the slides how it's succeeding around the world. And we were challenged with the idea that the challenge we were facing was how are we going to transfer this technology to scholars around the world to teach it in their own universities without spending a year or two with them, because that's impossible. And Werner came up with this crazy idea that we would literally create a textbook in PowerPoint slides and read the rigorously written sentences and paragraphs, and we will read the slides to the participants in the course word for word, with discussion and interruption and all of that kind of stuff. And I told him that was crazy. That absolutely wasn't going to work. We were going to get thrown out on our ear. And there was a big argument at that time. I hoped it would work. We finally settled on, I said, the course started on Monday, and I said, I'll give us all until Tuesday noon. And if the students are in a riot by Tuesday noon, we're going to have to stop and go back to the old way and figure out how we're going to transfer this to other people to teach it in a different way. By the time Tuesday noon occurred, the students were mostly in love with what was going on. So you're going to get a taste of that. Now, nobody believes that. We didn't have enough time to give you the data that we've collected on that, but I just take my word for it. It's been remarkably powerful. So this is a one-semester academic course that we created that makes the following outrageous promise to the participants taking the course, if I can get this to work. You will leave this one-semester course being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as your natural self-expression. Now, that's an insane promise. And underneath this is something that's profoundly important. Underneath this is a deep tension between what I always thought education and lecturing and these kinds of things was all about, which was me transferring knowledge to the participants, to the students. We do some of that in the course, but the entire course is designed to do something very different. We don't want to leave the students knowing. We want to leave the students being leaders and exercising leadership effectively as their natural self-expression. Now, the first time I had heard the term being used in that way, I was really puzzled, and I can see that I'm not the only one that was that way. But we have a shorthand way of summarizing it. An epistemological mastery leaves one knowing. In ontological mastery, ontology is all about the philosophy and science of being. An ontological mastery leaves one being, as in being a leader or being a person of integrity, and all of those kinds of things. So we spend an enormous time on an illustration of the fact that there's a big difference between knowing and being. At the Harvard Business School, we spend an enormous amount of effort on ethics courses and all that kind of stuff. We fail miserably. How do we know that? Just look at the number of Harvard MBAs that are going to jail each year. And we're not proud of that. There's a profound difference between being and knowing. And at some level, the secret for what we do, it all comes out of the new conversational domain that we've created, and you're going to get a little taste of that today. We do the course in six days, because at various places in the world. But it's best taught over one semester. So we and our colleagues, Steve Zaffron, Carrie Granger, and Joe DiMaggio, and our newest member, Jerry Echeverria, spent the last 11 years creating this course. The first 5 years was when, as I said, Dean Zupan of the Simon School of Business at the U of R courageously provided us with a classroom laboratory within which to do the research and development required to create a course that would actually leave students being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as their natural self-expression. Dan Struble, who I think is still here, I didn't have a chance to meet him when I got in today, was very critical in giving us support. And much of that teaching actually took place in this room, interestingly enough. So during the first 5 years that we taught the course at the Simon School, it was conducted variously from 3 to 5 full days. During the orientation period at the beginning of the school year, to students and some faculty and administrators from the university at large. Enrollments range from about 20 in the beginning to 120 in the last year. Since then, some material from the course has been taught here at the Simon School by Dan Struble, Candy O'Byrne, and Bob Madama. Sorry, this thing seems to be a little sticky. What's currently happening with the course? The course, or the course with variations or parts of the course, is already being taught by local professors in more than 10 universities around the world, from the United States Air Force Academy to Rutgers University to the medical school at Dartmouth College. As a part of our ongoing research and development of the course and to introduce it into new universities, we personally deliver the course twice a year. When we teach the course, instead of doing it over a semester, we do the course in 6 very full days, with 2 days off in the middle where the participants deal with personal and small group assignments from the course. We open up the courses we personally teach to non-university people so that we can research its impact not only on students and professors, but also on managers, executives, and other people with a commitment to leadership. And by the way, I encourage you to raise your hand, ask questions, issue challenges, whatever is on your mind. And if my back happens to be to you, just say Mike. And then I'll turn around and decide whether I want to call on you. So when we deliver the course in academic institutions, most of the participants are students ranging from undergraduates through MBA and master's students to PhD candidates, along with professors, administrators, and alumni from that institution, as well as professors and administrators from other academic institutions. When, as a result of taking the course as a participant, a professor chooses to personally teach the course, each year we conduct a Creating Course Leaders workshop to do the following: to train those professors committed to teaching the course to discover for themselves the content of the course. 2, to powerfully deliver the content of the course. 3, to effectively handle participants' questions and challenges. 4, and in what it takes personally to actually deliver on the promise of the course. During the 2 Creating Course Leader workshops we've conducted so far, there have been 68 academics trained to teach the course in their own institutions. Graduates of that course have formed their own organization, LCOLE, which stands for Learning Community for Ontological Phenomenological Leadership and Education. There are 45 active faculty members from 43 different universities and colleges around the world who are members of LCOLE. And when I get back to Florida, we're having a meeting with LCOLE in Sarasota this weekend. So we've also taught the course to and trained to deliver the course over 200 consultants from more than 60 firms who now offer the course to their clients. The course really has a big impact on the world. And it has that impact through the impact we have on our students, and the people we've trained to teach the course has on their students. This commitment includes that wherever the full course is taught as designed, it delivers on the following promise to participants. If I can get the change. You will leave this course being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as your natural self-expression. That contrasts with leaving the course with information and knowledge that you have to resurrect and figure out how to apply in any given situation. We guarantee to our students that if they do what we ask them to do, when you walk out the door, you're going to find yourself doing things you never did before and you didn't even think about them. And they were very effective. That's what we mean by natural self-expression, a natural response to the situation that's in front of you. Now that's a miracle, to actually be able to do that. And this isn't restricted, this teaching methodology is not restricted to teaching leadership and creating leaders. It can be used in lots of different places. And that's my real agenda before I die, is to get this all over in all kinds of topics. Please.
Is as a metaphor, if we watch athletes who perform at a high level, they're obviously not figuring out what to do, they're not remembering something. What they're doing has become for them a natural self-expression. And that's really what we mean. It's a good metaphor for what we mean here by natural self-expression.
Where would you desire to apply it? I'd like you to apply it to my golf game. Speaking of athletes.
Really good coaches do that for their pupils. Really good coaches have to do that. If they're going to have an impact, they have to do that. They can't be telling you how to do it. You have to be, okay? And I hope that gives you an analogy.
Yeah, but where would you, in your,
Oh, my goodness.
your own personal
Entrepreneurship, all over the place.
entrepreneurship?
Okay, management. See, we think in the standard profile or standard way of thinking in business schools that we train managers and we train leaders and we train financiers. And we teach them knowledge about management primarily, from me to you. That's what I did for much of my life, and I was darn good at it. Now the puzzle in my life, and I haven't figured out the answer to it, is that somewhere along the way, Bill and I figured out some things that actually shifted the being of our students. And how did I know that? I knew it because, well, first of all, they didn't like the first part of the course. And they would come to me and tell me that. You know, I'm spending $500 a class, one woman told me at Harvard, and I haven't learned anything yet. And then somewhere along the way, people would shift. And then they became, the course title at Harvard was Control, Coordination, and the Management of Organizations, CCMO. Then they turned into what became the general term for it at Harvard was CCMO terrorists. Because they went to every other course applying the CCMO stuff that they'd somehow learned, although they hated it, and caused a lot of trouble for my colleagues. And I heard a lot about that. So I still have not been able to figure out what it was exactly that Bill and I created. I know some of it, but I wish, eventually I'm going to get it figured out, where we shifted people's being. So,
And Mike, just a quick
Go ahead.
response to Richard's question. Lots of people study mathematics and learn a good deal about mathematics and never become a mathematician. And I suppose that those of you in the room who are mathematicians, at least the ones that I've known, there's a rollover period where you're no longer simply acquiring knowledge, but you now start to dwell in the world of mathematics. So all this course does is to leave people who participate in the course dwelling in the world of leadership.
and one of the things that makes me really proud is it's not restricted to Werner and I and our other co-instructors. We're able to transfer this technology through some of the procedures I've said already, and I'm not going to repeat myself, to other professors, other teachers who are then able to do the same thing with their students, their version of it, and it's catching on. Well, so we're going to draw on three experts from the field of leadership to help us answer the question being what enables us to make this outrageous promise to the participants of the course. The quotes on the following three slides are from the editor's introduction to the chapter that we wrote explaining our course that we were asked to write, explicating our course that we were asked to write for the Handbook for Teaching Leadership from Harvard. Carrie Granger, who is a professor at the Air Force Academy, who came to the third course we taught here. And took it back to the academy, and it became...
with her boss. Her boss was
Colonel Sanders.
Colonel Sanders. Really strapping, really handsome guy, and smart as the dickens.
Yes.
But,
And it was an incredible success. It became such a success that it became a threat to the psychology department who was teaching the required leadership course that they canned it through faculty politics. But it has resurrected its head, and it's being taught again. So the book is edited by the book that we wrote the article for. It's about a 25 or 30-page article. Chapter. And it's up on CERN if anybody wants to. Somewhere I think I put these slides will be available up on CERN if anybody wants to read them. The editors were Scott Snook, who's a senior lecturer at Harvard Business School, Nitin Noria, who's the dean of the business school, and the George Baker Professor of Administration, and Rakesh Khurana, who's now the Dean of Harvard College and the Marvin Bower Professor of Leadership Development. So these are non-trivial people. So the following are quotes from these editors on their introduction to our chapter, which was titled Creating Leaders in Ontological Phenomenological Model. This is the editors. Most experienced teachers are fairly comfortable teaching about leadership. After all, in most university settings, the successful acquisition of technical knowledge and skills is the central goal of education. Even more importantly, perhaps we know how to do this. We know how to inform. We know how to transfer knowledge. We know how to train skills. Most of us have spent much of our adult lives either learning or teaching important conceptual knowledge and technical skills. In fact, this process forms the very heart of most educational experiences in traditional classroom settings.
Mike, just to create a context, the whole book is about teaching leadership and gives various perspectives on doing so. The editors are obviously speaking to people who are interested in teaching leadership. Sorry, Mike.
So they go on to say, how does one teach leadership in a way that not only informs them about leadership, but also transforms them into actually being leaders? This eclectic group of scholars is talking about me and Werner and Carrie. It must be Werner that was the eclectic part. This eclectic group of scholars argues for adopting a decidedly ontological approach to leadership education that promises to leave students actually being leaders, contrasting their ontological approach described as being an action as experienced on the court with more traditional perspectives where leadership is observed and commented on from the stands. This chapter presents a rigorous theory of leadership education that begins and ends with the following bold promises to students. You will leave this course being who you need to be a leader, and you will leave this course with what it takes to exercise leadership effectively. I want to just emphasize a couple of things there. We won't have time to go into them in detail, but we put an enormous amount of emphasis in the course on the difference between an analysis or study or learning that takes place from the stands. Think about yourself looking down at the Super Bowl, commenting on, analyzing, criticizing, all of that kind of stuff, which is totally different from the role of the players and the coaches who are on the court. Now, I want everybody in this room to recognize that when we send our students out into the business world, they're on the court. And we haven't prepared them to be on the court. That's where the being stuff becomes important. And it's time that changed. For these authors, these are the editors, integrity, authenticity, and being committed to something bigger than oneself form the base of the context for leadership. The context that once mastered leaves one actually being a leader. By following a rigorous phenomenologically based methodology, students have the opportunity to create for themselves a context that leaves them actually being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as their natural self-expression. You know, we couldn't have written this comment on our paper any better. So I'm going to ask Werner to go over the next 9 slides so that he'll have a chance to say something, and I will have a chance to rest. And then it'll be kind of an open...
Mike never gets how much I love sitting here kibitzing on what he does. But anyway, let's see. So, an ontological, phenomenological model. The editors point to our ontological approach and our phenomenological methodology as an answer to their question. Let me find myself. How does one teach leadership in a way that not only informs them about leadership, but also transforms them into actually being leaders? By the way, quoting from our chapter in the book, of course, the students themselves do not need to study ontology. They only require the access to being and the source of action that is provided by the ontological perspective. And they don't need to study phenomenology. They only need to be provided with the actionable pathway to the being of being a leader and the actions of effective leadership made available by the phenomenological methodology. And
There's the URL for the
chapter. That's the URL on SSRN. Not that that's very used to you, but at any rate, there it is. So, new science of leadership, being a leader, an effective exercise of leadership, an ontological, phenomenological model. That's the name of the course. Sorry to move so people don't need to see through me. I apologize. Ontology, just to get these couple of words out of the way quickly. Ontology is the study of science, study and science of being, as Mike mentioned.
You got to get closer, Werner.
Okay. The ontological model of leader and leadership provides direct access to the actual nature of being when one is on the court, real time, being a leader, and opens up and reveals the source of one's actions when one is on the court, real time, exercising leadership. And with regard to phenomenology, phenomenology is the method used in ontology or in an ontological approach. The method that provides direct access to the actual as lived in the moment, on the court experience of being a leader and exercising leadership effectively. Now, I know Mike said it many times, and I'll just repeat that there's when you are in the process, when you are on the court functioning in whatever area you function in, there's very little knowledge present. When you're driving an automobile, you're not remembering how to drive an automobile. You're not drawing on knowledge. You're somehow, you'll pardon my poetic expression, dancing with the road and the motion of the automobile. And so, if you ever examine yourself in the throes of being effective at what you do, you'll see, I suggest, that you're really dancing with whatever it is you're dealing with, rather than remembering how to apply some algorithm, or even remembering what you're supposed to do.
Werner, let me interrupt for a moment. There are a number of people that came in later and they're standing. There are lots of seats down here. Please come on down and sit down if you'd like. If you want to be near the door so you can abandon the ship, that's fine too.
Okay. I'm sorry, I need to stay in the way and stay up close enough here. A word about our role in this effort. Both of us contribute our time. Mike, this is for you.
All right.
There you go.
So,
this is Mike's speech.
Basically,
So do it.
all of the time we spend on this, we do pro bono. We don't charge anybody for it. What we ask for is our expenses, and that's true of everybody else that works with us. And that's not only the traveling to the institutions and teaching the courses and doing that, but also the enormous, thousands and thousands of hours we've spent on research. We also have created a nonprofit foundation. We've unashamedly called it the Erhard Jensen Ontological Phenomenological Initiative, to raise funds to support these efforts and to provide a source of continuing expertise and support for the efforts when the two of us are no longer around. I'm now 74, and I think Werner's 77. 78. Hanukkah would know. I'm never going to catch up to him. So finally...
I have to remind Mike to respect his elders.
Yeah, we have that conversation more than once. Finally, the complete course materials, over 1,200 pages. Now, that's not literally 1,200 word pages. They're 1,200 pages of PowerPoint slides. Are available, what we call the slide deck textbook, and they're freely available on CERN along with all the pre-course readings, and we update them every time we teach a new course because we always make new innovations. So it's there for anybody to pick up and read, and I get involved in email conversations with people who are, it's very hard to just read it and get it all, but I actually have conversations through email with guys who have run into the material and who get it at a profound level. I think that takes a special kind of human being. But now back to you, Werner.
Thank you. So let's see. We've already said that a number of times. The important words up there are natural self-expression. And as I said, the best metaphor I can think of for what is meant, what we mean by natural self-expression is watching a competent athlete, not even a champion athlete, but a good athlete functioning in her or his own field.
You know,
So-
just using the athletic analogy, a good athlete with natural expression is almost perfect. But they're almost perfect because they produce a result.
Yes.
Okay, so do you ultimately get to the result of the leadership?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if I want that tennis ball to go into the left-hand court and I'm in the right-hand court, if I have to think about how to do that, I'm never going to get it there.
Exactly. Yeah. But you're quite right. Look, it all boils down to the results that are produced.
Right.
And as far as I can tell, the only thing that produces results are action. And actions as natural self-expression is a product of who you're being in the act, whatever act it is, whether you're being an athlete or a leader. And that's really what this leadership course is about. But it is about being effective, in other words, successful as a leader.
So let me give you an example.
As a leader, though, I'm actually desiring to have an effect, like moving the tennis ball on another person, typically.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
One of the indications of what happens to people in the court is over and over and over again we get feedback from them after either while they're taking the course or after they've left the course, and they say to us in one form or another, I found myself doing things I've never done before in my life. Never even thought about doing them before in my life, and they work. That's natural self-expression related to the circumstance you're dealing with. And there's no thinking about, now I'm not saying there's no thinking involved in this process ever, but there's no conscious thinking about it in the same way. Where's the football player? Here. You're not thinking about, have I got the right guy? Where? Right. Oh! Well, sweaters are almost the same color. Anyway, you're not doing a whole lot of thinking when you're running down the field, right? No. And dealing with all the opposition people, you're reacting.
right. And if I stood in the backfield where he stands and was given the job of doing what he does, and I looked at what was in front of me that I had to deal with, I won't see most of what he sees that allows him to be an effective athlete. He now dwells in that world. And as a dweller in that world, like a physician dwells in the world of medicine, an athlete dwells well, particularly if you're a running back, you dwell in a certain world. And you see things that I, in exactly the same place with eyes almost hopefully as good as yours, wouldn't see. Because it wouldn't come together for me like it comes for him. And because his actions are a natural correlate of the way what he's dealing with occurs for him, he's an effective running back, and I would get killed before I got through the front line.
Here's my question, though, aren't you presuming a certain level of innate talent and or ability because of the fact that you're making this promise, but, there are better drivers than others. Yep. There are better football players that, coaching can only take you so far if you have somebody who has 2 left feet or whatever else. And so you're making this promise, but is it because of self-selection at this point? Is that the people who are in these courses, in these things, you're talking about the military, where the military inherently selects people who are choosing to do leadership roles. Yes. I'm just curious.
No, yeah, certainly people choose to be in these courses. So people who don't have that desire or interest don't wind up being in the course. So there's a degree of self-selection, as you say. Not everybody wants to be, or maybe has the innate equipment to be a leader. But my guess is that most of us who lack that equipment, or whatever it is, don't wind up attempting to be leaders.
And by the way,
everybody who's got the innate equipment doesn't necessarily wind up to be leaders. And a lot of people with the innate equipment who got started in a leadership role have failed in that role.
by the way, leadership is a dangerous activity. It's not all glory.
It's a contact sport.
You bet. In a very deep way.
One of the best teachers of leadership that I know is from the Kennedy School, Ronnie Heitz. I have no memory. Mike's got a little bit left. At any rate, he wrote this really brilliant book about just exactly what it takes, what you need to deal with to be a leader. Because oftentimes people, to get back to what Richard was talking about, oftentimes people are looking for you to give them the answers. And frankly, that's not very good leadership. You leave people with no more power than they had when they started. Let's see, we're going to try to get through this talk real fast now. Okay. So there's 3 structural elements of the course. We're going to break it down so it's really way oversimplified. It's going to make more questions than answers, and I apologize for that. But in the time we have, that's about as good as we're going to get for the overall picture of the leadership course. So it's got 3 structural elements. The first structural element, number 1, is the 4 factors that form the foundation for being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as your natural self-expression. On the next slide, we'll tell you what those 4 factors are. Then secondly is the contextual framework. This is the really tough one. The contextual framework for leader and leadership that when mastered becomes a context that in any leadership situation has the power to leave you being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as your natural self-expression. And I frankly find that first of all, difficult statement to follow entirely, but outrageous. You mean to tell me that there's some context which if I master, whatever that means, if I master, will leave me in any leadership situation, being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as my natural self-expression? You mean that's what you're really saying? And the answer to the question is yes. I know it's outrageous and you should suspect that it can't possibly be true. So far, so good. I'm just going to read that quickly again. The contextual framework, this is the second part of the course, is a contextual framework for leader and leadership that when mastered becomes a context that in any leadership situation has the power to leave you being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as your natural self-expression.
So let me say something here. That lands flat with you. In the course, we'll spend a non-trivial amount of time in various ways getting our participants to understand that the context is determinant in their life. And almost nobody in the world gets that. And once you get that, it opens your eyes amazingly. Go ahead, Werner.
No, I was just going to say, if we have time, the last 3 slides in this presentation talk about a context that, at least for me, really wowed me about the true power of a context that reaches so deeply into our structure and function that it's amazing. We'll see when we get there. Anyway, the third part of the program, 3 parts to the course. First, the last part is eliminating, or at least relaxing, from the way I wound up being the ontological, perceptual, and functional constraints that get in the way of my natural self-expression, and I've got them. I've learned how to function very effectively in the box in which I'm comfortable. Only that won't work for me as a leader. I've got to be able to function outside the limits in which I've gotten to wherever I've gotten in life if I'm now going to function in this new world of being a leader and exercising leadership effectively.
So I'm going to take 45 seconds to give an example. So a while back, as part of the result of dealing with Werner and this material, I was coming from London and I landed in Newark and the plane was late and I was trying to get home to Vermont and I had luggage and on and on and on. And it was an impossible thing to happen. And lo and behold, it happened. Some guy helped me out. And he said, don't take the train, do this and walk there and you'll be fine. And so I'm on the phone telling my partner Sue about, everybody knows what a crappy place the Newark airport is. And I was telling her, you can't believe it. This guy actually helped me and went out of his way. He undid the gates. He let me go through. He told me where to go and what not to do and what to do. And I'm going on with this, and Sue says to me, Michael, I think for the first time you asked for help in your life. And I said, Jesus, that's true. I asked that guy for help. Now, I've never done that before. That's what Werner's talking about. I didn't know I had that constraint. That's what Werner's talking about eliminating or relaxing some of these constraints.
By the way, if you don't think you have any constraints, ask your spouse.
He'll tell you.
Okay, so that's the 3 structural elements of the course. Now, to make it a little bit more complicated and difficult, there we go. So the 3 are on the left: the foundation, the contextual framework, the ontological constraints. And the 4 factors that make up the foundation for being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as your natural self-expression are integrity. Michael talked with some depth about that. Authenticity. We won't talk about that. We won't talk about being committed to something bigger than yourself, and we won't talk about being cause in the matter.
Being cause in the
excuse
matter?
me?
What does that mean, being cause?
I'm going to do this really fast, Richard, because it'll take us an hour if we do it fully.
Okay.
What does it mean to be cause in the matter? It's a declaration. It's not an assertion. But if I'm willing to engage with whatever I'm dealing with in life from the perspective that I'm cause in the matter, not like it's so, but I'm willing to take that stand in the matter instead of making the people who messed it up wrong, which never empowers almost anybody. You get the drift. Okay. At any rate, integrity, authenticity, being committed to something bigger than yourself, being close in the matter. They're all very highfalutin, wonderful things, and all of us should salute. And if we do so, we're probably no more ready for being a leader than we were before we saluted. But if they become part of my natural self-expression, I've got a powerful foundation on which to be a leader and exercise leadership effectively.
So if anybody's interested, there's about a 15 or 20 page paper up on CERN by Werner and I don't know, somebody else, that actually goes through, a couple of others, that actually goes through those things. And it's pretty easy reading and it'll give you some insight into it. It's actually very powerful. It's called The 4 Foundations of Leadership. SSRN is the company I accidentally founded years ago that has all of this work up there. So if you just go to CERN.com.
Not just this work.
There are about 450,000 authors that have put their research up there, and it's all for free. So, and if you just search for Werner's name or my name on SSRN, go to our author page or go to his. It's easier, and you'll find a whole bunch of this stuff.
Anyway, I'll just do the quick one line, what it takes to be a man or woman of, what it takes to be authentic. Most of us try to be authentic. That's like putting, can I do that here? That's like
you can do frosting.
Oh, okay. That's like putting frosting on cow dung and thinking it'll go down well. The path to authenticity for us human beings is to be authentic about my inauthenticity. And that is awesome for the people you're leading.
And nobody wants to do that But if you watch people when they do that, you admire them. But we don't learn that.
No, I want to put my best foot forward and show myself as a blah, 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 blah. Boy, does that not work. What I've learned in my now old age is that people know anyhow. So I don't think I've now learned I don't really fool. I thought I was good at it too, damn it. Okay, at any rate, this again, sorry for the contextual framework, the 4 aspects. This is going to be won't probably mean much to anybody. Sorry about that. All you need to get is that these 4 things create a context that we say, once mastered, leaves you being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as your natural self-expression, whatever those 4 things are. One is leader and leadership is linguistic abstractions, which, when mastered, leaves you free to be and free to act.
So now I'm going to interrupt. Werner, if we get involved in this, we're never going to get done.
Okay, I agree. Leader and leadership is phenomena, leader and leadership is concept, leader and leadership is terms. And then finally, the two kinds of ontological constraints, perceptual constraints, and functional constraints. Mike, I think this is running out of battery power. We're going to go past that and past that. So, what we share with you may be of interest and even provoke you into discussing it with your friends, colleagues, and family. But unless you discover it for yourself, there's a big, big, big flag in this course. Unless you discover it for yourself, what we share with you will not make any difference for you. So I can learn from Professor Hennessy, and I can use what I learned from Professor Hennessy to discover what he taught me for myself. And this whole leadership course is based on no transfer of knowledge, only using whatever gets presented as an opportunity for the participants in the course to discover it for themselves. And if they don't do that, nothing worthwhile happens.
And discovering doesn't mean memorizing it. It literally means discovering the phenomenon in their own lives.
Yeah, I would guess that most people in the room have discovered something that they discovered for themselves, something they learned. And I would almost bet that your experience in doing so is kind of like mine. It was like, wow! Whereas when I learned it, it was interesting and, provocative and all those wonderful things, but I'm like, wow! So we want to get to, as we call it, opening the refrigerator door and finding the Grand Canyon in there.
Does that happen ever in that interim period when you have to break in classes?
I'm sorry, say it again,
Does
please.
that kind of discovery ever happen in the interim period when you take a break from classes?
Yeah.
Sometimes you 3 on and then 3 off and 3 back on. So that kind of discovery might happen in the middle?
Yeah, that's right. Oftentimes it's in the groups working together during the breaks between the class sessions. And a lot of it happens in the 2 days where we're off between the 3 on, 2 off, 3 on. Yeah. And we hope to God it happens in class from time to time, because if you get it, and, oh wow, then it kind of opens up that possibility for me. Yeah, I understand this. I have a grasp of it conceptually, but I didn't get it like that guy got it. It didn't knock me back yet. Maybe I could discover this for myself. Yeah.
So let me just say something, because we're not going to cover it, but it is one of the interesting phenomenon about this course and the way we do it is that we've found that the more people are in the classroom and the more heterogeneous they are, the more transformation that takes place. Now that's astounding. And the most we've ever had in the room is 330 in Panchgani, India so far, but we're looking to get it to 500 and then maybe 800. I remember the CEO who was unhappy that he got a teenager in his group. And so that's what I mean by more diversity, from housewives to teenagers to CEOs, high-powered consultants. The more we have of that, the more transformation, the more learning, the more discovering that goes on. The other thing is the more people there are in the room who are sharing in the front of the room, the more of all of that goes on. Absolutely stunningly surprising. And it's very hopeful because it means we can do it, and we think we can do it easily with 500 and probably 1,000 people. And in the next couple of next couple of years, we're going to be able to do that.
Well, the small groups are still the same size if you have 500 in the class than if you have 300 in the class. Okay, the claim is based on 11 years of experience in leading our leadership course. Sorry to be rumbling fast, but if we read together, it goes very fast. We see that although the content of the course is powerful, or at least we think it's powerful, what leaves the participants being leaders and exercising leadership effectively as their natural self-expression is actually discovering for themselves what we present in the course. In short, Mike likes this, so it's all over the place. I apologize. In short, an epistemological mastery, what we call a from the stands mastery of a subject leaves one knowing. And an ontological mastery and on the court mastery of a subject leaves one being. Oh, boy. Of course, when one is a leader, then knowledge is power. Yeah. Once you dwell in the world of, then knowledge becomes something more powerful than mere knowing. The foundation for being a leader and exercise leadership effectively, integrity. We would say you can forget about having integrity until any out of integrity occurs for you as a diminution of yourself. And you'll see Mike speak about that in some detail a little later, if I get finished quickly. Authenticity. Authenticity begins with being authentic about your inauthenticity. That's startling for most people. Being committed to something bigger than yourself. Heroes are ordinary people who are given being and action by something bigger than themselves. And true leaders are heroes. They fit that description. Boy, that's good news for me, because I sure qualify as ordinary.
So let me just say for people, I have a bad rep on this thing, because people think that all I want companies to do is maximize the value of the stock. First of all, that's false. That's not what I ever said. But I guarantee you, if you're talking about maximizing the right value, which is the total value of firm, if that's all you're doing, you won't maximize value. You've got to be committed. The company has to be, the firm has to be committed to something bigger than itself that will light people up, cause them to be attracted to your organization, passionate about it. They'll find something in what you're committed to, the company is committed to, that satisfies them and lights them up and excites them. And that's a huge missing component of what's going on out there in the world, and it's this one.
Okay, and finally, the fourth one is being cause in the matter. Richard and I already discussed that. We'll move right along. Let's go. Come on, Werner. Let's see. Well,
this is a lack of integrity, and we see the unworkability it causes.
Okay, great. Well, there are 4 ways of being that constitute the foundation for being a leader, and while the contextual framework is central to being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as your natural self-expression, without integrity, as far as we can tell, none of it works. It's all interesting, wonderful, exciting, blah, 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 but on the court, it loses its power when integrity is lacking. By the way, I've been with Mike where in a talk in business school, it's taken us a full 3 hours to do complete justice to what it is to be a man or woman of integrity, as integrity is constituted in being a leader in the effective exercise of leadership. What Mike will do today is to share enough of this new model of integrity for you to have an opportunity, if you choose to use that opportunity, to discover for yourself the power of integrity as it's constituted in being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as your natural self-expression. Michael?
The law of integrity. Integrity is defined in the dictionary as the state of being whole, complete. By the way, looking back on my life, I realize how far out of integrity I was. And I can only begin to dream of how much better my life had been if I hadn't been such a shit. And all of my colleagues know that very well. My I'm sorry?
And your wife?
Oh, yes. Two of them that are divorced. But my current partner is great. Okay. Our law of integrity.
Mike, finish reading the first paragraph, please.
It's important. Integrity is defined in the dictionary as the state of being whole, complete, unbroken, unimpaired, sound, in perfect condition. By the way, when we use the word integrity, it has almost nothing to do with what you think it means. So just set that aside and be open to something else. And if you take even a little bit of it or go to read about it in the slides with you, it will result in profound changes in your life.
What we'd like you to set aside is that integrity is about doing good instead of doing bad. In other words, it's a value. That's what we'd like you to set aside for the moment. Because instead of being normative, we're going to assert that integrity is a positive phenomenon. Okay, go on, Mike.
Positive phenomenon, not in the sense that it's good, but it just is. Does that make any sense to people? It's not that it's good. That's not what positive means. It just means that it describes something as it exists in the world.
Like gravity is a positive phenomenon. It's just the way things are. It's neither good nor bad. It's just like that. Go on, Mike.
So our law of integrity states, as integrity, being whole and complete, declines, workability declines. And as workability declines, the opportunity for performance declines. The easiest example is take a bicycle wheel and pull a couple of spokes out. Now, as you use it, it's going to get out of round. And if you pull more spokes, eventually it's going to collapse. Its workability will go down, and it may stop working entirely. That's exactly what's going on in your life, and you don't know it. I know I just insulted you, but I wanted your attention.
We're broken, we're impaired, we're unsound.
That's right.
Not imperfect.
Right, that's exactly right.
At least your word.
Okay, now we're going to clarify that a little. Thus, the maximization of whatever performance measure you choose requires integrity. Because if you've got something that's unworkable, like yourself or the bicycle wheel, it's not going to produce a high level of performance. So that applies to the quality of your life, to your effectiveness in life, including your effectiveness of being and acting when being a leader and exercising leadership. Attempting to violate the law of integrity, which will generates painful consequences just as surely as attempting to violate the law of gravity. You know, you jump off a 4-story building without a safety device and a parachute or something like that, it's going to hurt when you hit the ground. So, put simply and somewhat overstated, without integrity, nothing works. Now, I've got it stuck. Think of this as a heuristic. If you or our organization operate in life as though this heuristic is true, performance will increase dramatically. And the impact on performance is huge, anywhere in the range of 100 to 500%. Okay.
So Mike and I were at the Harvard Business School doing a presentation on just integrity for 3 hours, and Mike made this statement, and his colleagues in the room got outraged. He wanted to know where was his evidence. And Mike said the evidence is anecdotal and a little bit of blah, 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 blah. And Mike went on, and at the end of the talk, Mike was standing here, and there was a man all the way in the back who put his hand up. And he stood up, and he said, I'm
Paul Fireman.
Paul Fireman, who's for those of you who don't recognize, if you're not old enough, was the CEO of Reebok, the most highly compensated CEO in the world for years. Why? Because he was outrageously successful. Paul puts his hands up and said, by the way, Paul has engenders a certain respect amongst Mike's colleagues at the Harvard Business School. And Paul said, Mike lowballed you because he had actually built that organization on integrity.
From the early model that Werner and Steve Zaffron had, and so he had spent years with it and knew the impact that it had. So no kidding.
To tell that story because I know this is hard to believe. This happened to.
Yeah, you don't believe it,
100%.
but it's true. And it is a lowball estimate. So what is integrity for a person? It's a matter of, integrity for a person is a matter of that person's word, nothing more and nothing less.
Sorry, Mike. So integrity for an object is not a matter of the object's word, huh? But integrity for you or me is a matter of our word, nothing more and nothing less. The kind of integrity we're talking about, the whole, complete, unbroken, sound, perfect condition. Okay.
In a little while, we're going to tell you that who you are as a person basically is your word.
That's a lot easier to make your words unimpaired.
For a person to have integrity, the word of that person must be whole, complete, unbroken.
You're arguing that it reaches back to yourself. Okay, Mike.
Yeah. The question in the matter of integrity is what constitutes your word. This is where the ball game is. What is your word? And if you follow this carefully and begin to implement it in life, it won't all come at once, amazing things will happen. You know, divorces will stop happening, like in my life. Anyway, your word defined. First of all,
it will happen when they weren't happening and should have happened, by the way. Excuse me.
Yes, okay, but I'm not going down that track. You can imagine what happens over a glass of wine with him. What you said, whatever you said. So the first is there are going to be 6 definitions of your word, 6 different elements of your word. The first one is what you said, very simple. Whatever you said you will do or will not do, in the case of doing it on time. That's pretty simple. What you know, whatever you know to do or know not to do, and if it's doing it as you know it was meant to be done and doing it on time, unless you have explicitly said you will not do so. What is expected of you? These are literally unexpressed requests. Now, anybody that's married or in a relationship with anybody, you just think a little about that relationship while we're going through here. Whatever you are expected to do or not do by anyone with whom you desire to have a workable relationship, and in the case of doing it on time, unless you have explicitly said to the contrary. Okay? I don't know. There must be somebody in this room that's married. Well, maybe there are many of you. Just think about what happens when your spouse expects you to do something. This is an unexpressed request. She or he has not actually asked you to do it. They secretly want you to do it. Now, what happens when you don't do it? It hits the fan. And that relationship has some rough times. I know, I've done it over and over and over again. So,
but if you were to take that on, you would really be looking to find what are the unexpressed requests. Most of us, speaking for myself, don't do it naturally.
Now, what happens is, way to handle this, I'll jump ahead a little bit. If I'm in relationships with people and organizations that I want to have work, I have to pay attention to what those unexpressed requests are, those expectations that they never told me about. I have to manage those. I have to find out what they are. And by the way, I don't have to do them. As long as what's your name?
Melissa.
So Melissa may expect me to do something, and I may come to Melissa. She and I have a relationship of some form. Maybe we're workmates. And she expects me to do something, and I say, I have this kind of sense that you expect me to do something in this domain. And she may say, well, yes. And I say, well, what is it? And she then explains. And I said, well, and I can say, well, you know what, Melissa, I'm never going to do that. I know that would get you. I know that would get you. Okay.
So like if
I guess my question is, if part of your word is having unexpected requests, does that mean if I choose to not, like if I have all these expressed requests, that maybe I still have high integrity? Like how does that play into it? Because like how can I still have high integrity if I never, like I just expect you to do the dishes?
Well, so first of all, you switched positions on me. So we're talking about my integrity, to make it clear. Or let's talk about your integrity. So, are you in a relationship with somebody? Maybe, maybe not. You don't have to say. Okay. It's a secret.
Reach that friendship.
Okay. Well, let's assume there's a relationship.
Relationship with somebody, including the boss, for God's sake. And if you don't think your boss has got unexpressed expectations of you, you're foolish. Okay.
And now, if you want to have that relationship work, you've got to be responsible for those unexpressed requests that we're going to call expectations of you.
And by that, you do have to do the reverse, too. In other words, my expectations of you...
I haven't done that, but let's wait up on that.
Okay. I was just going to say you're going to need to do the...
I will. So, you don't have to do it, but if you want that relationship to work, you got to figure out, and the best way to do is just ask, what those expectations are, and if you're not going to do it, tell them you're not going to do that. You may say, oh, but I'll do something else. I'll do this. Will that work for you? And almost always you can work something out that will work for both sides. And now...
But it's the unconscious, unexpected
Mike, you have a question?
requests that really cause the problem.
Absolutely. You know, and you got to figure out what they are. You're talking about your wife, I'm guessing, and it sort of fits my relationship with Sue.
I'm talking about my wife, I'm talking about my boss, I'm
Oh, yes.
about everybody.
Yep.
They all have a lot of
Mike, you have a question over here?
Yep. You got it handled? What you said was just exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Question over here. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. So my question actually goes back to your earlier slide, and that was related more to the institutional integrity. And if given a particular function, a set of functions, say for example, a function was performing exactly the way it was expected to, and then that expectation actually created a calamity or a catastrophe, then is that still operating in integrity, or is it that the function itself is flawed?
You mean what they were supposed to do?
Exactly.
Yeah, it may be wrong.
Well, and Mike, it could be that the something in the function itself is out of integrity.
Right.
Which is a different issue.
So then what you're suggesting then is that there's an element of morality that's also included.
No.
Then what is it?
No, it's very good, the question, though. That's right. Because
what is the distinguishing factor then between something that you consider to be right or something that operates within the function that it's...
Well, when we're dealing with expectations, it's purely a matter of whether I want to meet it. Let's talk about it between you and I. And if I don't want to meet it, it's not my word as long as I tell you I'm not going to do that. Now, I might say I'll do this or that instead, but that's not required. The only thing is, and I guarantee you, even if you go around telling people you're never going to do their expectations, you're never going to satisfy them, that's going to work better than if you ignored all those expectations and they were surprised by the fact that you didn't do it. I know that sounds a little funny, but...
Mike, think about it in terms of employees. If you have an employee and you let that employee have an expectation that you are not going to meet, at some point that's going to blow up to whatever size the expectation was. The employee is much better off if you've been straight with them up front. Straight meaning you ferreted out the expectation and simply said, no, that's not going to get met. Here's what you do get, but you don't get that.
Does that make sense to you?
It does. I think, I was just thinking, for example, I mean, look at the financial crisis, obviously. You know, the institution of all of the derivatives and the relaxing of regulatory issues. I think all of those things, they actually performed exactly the way they were intended to. And they created, obviously, a situation that became untenable.
Right. If we go down that path, we're never going to get to the cocktails.
The one thing
I mean, it's disgusting what's been going on in finance.
But it did function within the integrity of what it was intended.
Well, no. It was dramatically out of integrity. That's a long discussion. We don't have time to do it.
Yeah, the design was out of integrity.
Okay. I would agree with you.
Yeah. Well.
So number 4 is what you say is so. Listen to this one carefully. Whenever you have given your word to others as to the existence of something or some state of the world, your word includes being willing to be held accountable, that the others would find your evidence makes what you have asserted valid for themselves. Read it again. I'll read it for you. What you say is so. Whenever you have given your word to others as to the existence of something or some state of the world, your word includes being willing to be held accountable, that the others would find your evidence makes what you have asserted valid for themselves. If I give you my evidence of why I say this is what the way the world is, I'm willing to be held accountable by you that that's the way you would see the world too. You would agree with me. Now, what that does...
would also agree.
Yeah. Now, what that does is it prevents all lying, all exaggerations, I didn't actually lie to you, but I allowed you to have this expectation of something, and you were counting on me, and since I didn't say anything about it, you assumed it must be right. Okay, now, people play that game all the time. And what it does is it's incredibly damaging to the relationship. Whatever the relationship is, a business relationship, a romantic relationship, a friendship. And this one is brilliantly written. Just astoundingly perceptive. And when you violate that rule, you're causing yourself trouble.
You're certainly going to undermine the effectiveness of being a leader and any exercise of leadership.
All right, standing for something. What you stand for, that is what you say that your life is about, or for what you can unquestionably be counted on. Or you could be saying that about what the firm is about, and what the firm can be unquestionably counted on. Whether expressed in the form of a declaration made to one or more people, or even to yourself, as well as what you allow people to believe that you stand for is a part of your word. What I allow people to believe I stand for is part of my word. You know, I may know darn well you think I'm this kind of person, and I allow you to do that. Well, that's my word. Now, people will allow others to see themselves in certain ways, and they know darn well they're not that way, and they're not going to behave that way. That causes trouble every time it happens. The moral, ethical, and legal standards. The moral, ethical, and legal standards for which you have not explicitly declined are part of your word. Now, this is a short version of this. So, the moral, ethical, and legal standards of the company, the culture, the society, the state, the town that you live in are part of your word, unless you have explicitly announced that you're not going to follow those. And what we didn't have room to put on the slide is you willingly bear the consequences of that. So here's an example. Gandhi, this little, not very well-dressed guy changed the lives of 600 million people by being clear with the British government about the rules he was not going to follow. And he was clear that he was willing to undertake and undergo the punishments that they might mete out. And the nonviolent movement, Martin Luther King, is another example going on here. Enormously powerful, and very different from lying and cheating in the shadows. So integrity is honoring your word. We've just talked about what your word is. And honoring your word is keeping your word and on time. Sorry. Or whenever you will not be keeping your word, just as soon as you become aware that you will not be keeping your word, including not keeping your word on time, you say to everyone impacted that you will not be keeping your word, and that you will keep that word in the future, and by when, or that you won't be keeping that word at all, and what you will do to deal with the impact on others of your failure to keep your word, or to keep it on time. So you clean up the mess as best as you can. Now, every one of us doesn't want to admit when we're not going to keep our word. And we certainly don't want to tell the people that are depending on us to keep that word, that we're not going to keep it. And I guarantee you that causes enormous amounts of trouble in the world. And what I'm asking you to do, you don't have to announce it, because there's not a single person in this room, including Werner and I, that doesn't do it. And this won't make any difference to you, none, unless you discover it in your own life. Oh, you know that thing Mike was saying? I remember about 6 months ago I did one of those. And then you may find out there were 2 yesterday. And
just one quick word.
That's my experience.
Since this is about leadership, it's important to recognize that out of integrity behavior as a leader undermines the foundation on which you are standing to be a leader and exercise leadership. It's just that simple.
And you know it when you've been in the company of a leader who's out of integrity. Really bad cases of it are outright lies, or obfuscations, or unwilling to tell the truth, withholding. People don't trust them. They're not going to follow them.
I think on a very simple basis, it gives you a reason, an excuse not to be accountable.
Right.
I mean, if my boss, if my leader doesn't stand on a firm foundation, why should I worry about whether I did a good job or didn't do a good job?
Yeah.
Or my justifications are as good as his.
Exactly.
So anybody, we're now over time, so anybody that has things to be doing, the cocktails, I've assured that no cocktails are going to be served downstairs until I'm done. but so
Michael, we got to go fast.
Yeah.
I promise to shut up.
As this new model of, unless it's something important, Werner, this new model of integrity points out, integrity is the state or condition of being whole, complete, unbroken, unimpaired, sound, in perfect condition. Such a state is the necessary and sufficient condition for workability. Think about the bicycle. And workability is a necessary condition for performance. As a result, it becomes clear that integrity determines the opportunity set for performance. It doesn't tell you what you're going to get, but the closer you are to being in integrity, the bigger is your opportunity set. And the bigger is your opportunity set, the better you can do. Yet one only needs to read the newspaper to be clear about the almost universal lack of integrity. How can that be? The answer is the fact that integrity determines one's opportunity for performance is concealed by what, paraphrasing Rawls, the political scientist, we term the veil of invisibility. There are 11 factors that contribute to this veil of invisibility, and we will discuss some, but not all of these below. So let's consider what it's like to be a person of integrity, to be whole and complete as a person in your word. And I want you to be thinking about what it would be like if this was the description of your life. As we said, at least in the matter of integrity, who you are is your word, nothing more and nothing less. In a very real sense, who you are, period, is your word. You have very little dominion over your mental state, emotional state, physical state, or even what you think or remember, what comes to mind. But you do have something to say about what comes out of your mouth. Given that your word is that over which you do have dominion, it is, as we said, not too much to say that who you are is your word. Perhaps the most important aspect of being out of integrity is the loss of self. Or if that is too much for you to take in, then think about it as the loss of power. In a very real sense, you are your word. When you are out of integrity as a person, you are, as a person, less than whole, complete, unbroken, unimpaired, sound, in perfect condition. Instead of being a person of power because you have lost your power, you are left being a person of force and cunning. When you honor your word to yourself and others, you are at peace with yourself, and therefore act from a place where you are at peace with others and the world, even those who disagree with, who might ordinarily feel threatened by. You might ordinarily feel threatened. You know, I spent, 55, 60 years biting my fingernails. It was socially embarrassing. I couldn't stop. But when I got this integrity stuff, that stopped. I got more whole and complete. Whatever it was that was gnawing away at me was that lack of integrity. That manifested itself in that way and lots of other ways. And my colleagues can tell you more stories about me. You live without fear for yourself. That is, who you are as a person. There is no fear of losing the admiration of others. You do not have to be right. You act with humility. Everything or anything that someone might say is okay for consideration. There's no need to defend or explain yourself or rationalize yourself. You are able to learn. This state is often mistaken as mere self-confidence rather than the true courage that comes from being whole and complete. That is, comes from being a man or woman of integrity. This is a critically important element of being a leader. Now, given where we are, I'm going to... Does anybody know how to run this computer? Because I run a Mac.
Whatever you want. What do you want?
Do you know? Let's get to the end. Let's get to the end, Werner, where...
Where do you want me to go?
Let's go through all of this stuff.
Go past all of it?
Yeah.
Great. By the way, I agree.
Okay, now get a little slower. A picture of integrity, that's what I wanted. So there are 11 things that... I know I'm getting thirsty as well as the rest of you. What would your life be like and what would your performance be if the following were true? You've done what you said you would do and you did it on time. Just dwell in this. You've done what you said you would do and you did it on time. You've done what you know to do. You did it the way it was meant to be done and you did it on time. You've done what others would expect you to do even if you never said you would do it and you did it on time. Or about this or that expectation of theirs, you have informed them that you will not meet this or that expectation. And you have informed others of your expectations of them and have made explicit requests to those others. No hidden expectations, explicit requests. And whenever you realize that you are not going to do any of the foregoing or not going to do it on time, you've said so to everyone who might be impacted. And you did so as soon as you realized that you wouldn't be doing it or wouldn't be doing it on time. And if you are going to do it in the future, you have said by when you would do it. And you have dealt with the consequences of your not doing it on time or not doing it at all for all those who are impacted by your not doing it on time or not doing it at all. You've cleaned up the mess in their lives. You've done the best you can to do that. In a sentence, you have done what you said you would do, or you have said you are not doing it. You have nothing hidden. You are truthful, forthright, straight, and honest. And you have cleaned up any mess you have caused for those depending on your word. And almost unimaginable, what if others operated in this way with you? What if you operated in a company, or in a family, or in a university in which everybody interacted with everybody else that way? That would be an amazing place to be. And it just comes from knowing what your word is and honoring that word, not keeping it. Most of the crap that gets written about integrity, where people have gone partway down this road, says when you give your word, you must keep it. That's totally fatal. So what happens if I gave my word to you about X, Y, or Z, and then I found out that Melissa had to die?
Did you say had to die?
Yeah. In order for me to keep that word.
I just want to make sure we
Yeah.
filled me off.
So I'm not going to keep that word to you.
It's okay for you to move to the back now.
I'm dead.
No, you see, what I want you to get is you cannot be trapped simply because you gave your word that you're going to have to fulfill it. You honor it. And you'll get yourself in all kinds of trouble if you think you've got to keep your word. Because then you're going to start hiding it, workarounds, and it's all out of integrity.
Or you don't give your word that something big enough to make your life worthwhile.
Yeah, okay, let's stop right there.
Mike, I want to do those last 3 slides. I promise to do
Oh,
them
yeah,
fast.
okay, good.
So here,
You want me to find and get to the last 3?
It'll work better if you do it that way. The workaround. Oh, yeah. Okay, here we go. So let me just do this quickly. You know, we made this outrageous statement that there's a context which, if mastered, leaves you being a leader and exercising leadership effectively as your natural self-expression, and we're going to give you the opportunity to create that context for yourself in 6 days. Nobody should believe that. I wouldn't believe it if somebody told me. So now I'm going to take 3 slides to leave you with the sense of just how powerful certain contexts can be. Come on.
If you get closer up here.
Yes, that's the only way it'll work. Okay, sorry to stand in your way.
This is the unworkability that's created by the lack of integrity.
Okay. The power of
We
con-
can't stand back.
Okay, come on. How many of you have been told that stress is harmful to your health? It makes you sick. It increases your risk of everything from the common cold to cardiovascular disease. Most of us believe that stress is our enemy. Certainly, that's the way I was brought up and told, and blah 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 blah. Okay, I'm going to tell you about a study of the effects of stress that I learned about from a Stanford University health psychologist, Dr. Kelly McGonigal. Much of what follows on this and the next slide is simply quoting her. The study tracked 30,000 adults for 8 years. The study started by asking people, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? 3 possibilities: little stress, moderate stress, a lot of stress. They also asked, do you believe that stress is harmful for your health? And then they used public death records to find out who of the 30,000 people died. Those people who experienced a lot of stress in the previous year had a 43% increased risk of dying. Unsurprising, we know stress is bad. However, but that was true only for those whose context for stress was that it is harmful to your health. Only those. And by contrast, those who experienced a lot of stress, but whose context for stress was that it's not harmful to your health, had no increased risk of dying. In fact, they had the lowest risk of dying, including those who experienced low stress. This gives you a bit of a sense of the power of a context. The researchers in the 2 studies on which McGonigal's report is based estimated that over the 8 years that they were tracking deaths, 182,000 Americans died prematurely, not from stress, but from their context for stress. The context is decisive. By the way, her comments were based on 2 studies. Oh, God, I can't. Sorry.
They're there somewhere.
No, I think they got left off, Mike. Oh. They did. Okay, I just want to say 2 things. First off, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. As you can probably tell, I love doing this. Yeah. And I never take the opportunity for granted. So thank you. And secondly, you cannot know what an enormous privilege it is for me to work with Mike. So I just want to share with you the incredible privilege it is for me to work with Mike. Not only is it a privilege to work with him, but the enormity of the things that I've learned from him still move me. So thank you all very much.
You would be able... I just have one closing comment. You wouldn't be able to tell that from the amount of shouting that goes on. By both of us, I might add.
We've got a few small thank yous. First to Richard. I don't think you have a shirt with our new positioning statement. Hope it's the right size. And then for both Mike and Werner, this is a copy of the book about Constellation Brands that Richard authored. So you find out more about one of the world's top companies in our backyard. Thank you all for joining. Sorry we're out of integrity.
I have to say one thing, which is we're going to have to give you new ones, and 3 months. So we owe you those. That will be the same, but there's 3 new chapters.
All right, great. Yeah, look forward to it.
Thank you.
Jenny, you got that? Okay.
Reception downstairs in the rotunda. If you can join us, that'd be great. Constellation Brands products.